Good afternoon. My name is Taylor Thompson, and today I'm going to be explaining to you how to make sausage cheddar balls. I'm going to kind of do my own little demonstration over here. The reason that I am going to show you how to make sausage cheddar balls is because I make them every year for Christmas, for Thanksgiving. Sometimes I even throw them in for Easter, and everyone absolutely loves them. So that being said, I am going to show you guys how to make them. Several people have so many different variations of how to make this recipe, but I try to put my own little twist on it, so I hope that you learned something from it today. So usually whenever I'm going to start making my sausage cheddar balls, I normally make sure I have a really clean workstation. Obviously you don't want to make something in a dirty work area and then end up with like weird dog hairs or anything like that. It might have been cluttering around your house, in your meat, and in somebody else's house on their plate, which is really gross. So I always make sure I have a nice clean workstation. Usually I use my KitchenAid mixer. I got this about 2 years ago, and it's probably one of my favorite tools and most used tools in the kitchen. You can also use just a standard mixing bowl. If you don't have a KitchenAid mixer or even a handheld mixture, you can use your hands for what you're going to need to do for this. So I always either have one of the two out. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to have both of them out today. So I have two different apparatuses, different ways that I could do this. I am going to be using my KitchenAid mixer for the demonstration today because, like I said, it's my favorite. So basically what I do when I come into the kitchen, I wash my hands and then I come over to the stove. Usually for this recipe, you want to preheat the oven to 350 degrees. So I turn that on first thing because for some reason my oven takes a bazillion years to preheat anyways. And then usually I go ahead and get out whatever kind of pan I'm going to be putting the sausage balls on later. So I'll do that now. This guy will do. It's pretty old and gritty, but it gets the job done. And usually I spray something on that, like some Pam or even some butter or something like that, just to make sure that the sausage balls don't really stick to the bottom. So, moving on. Once I've got all of my materials out that I need, I make sure that my ingredients are set out as well. Usually to make the sausage balls that I like, I get 1 box of Bisquick. I buy 1 pound of Jimmy Dean sausage. You can pick pretty much any flavor of the Jimmy Dean sausage that you want. I prefer the sage flavor because I think it gives it a little something different. A lot of people use the regular flavor, and I feel like that flavor is, it's pretty good, but it just doesn't have anything different when you go to bite into it. It doesn't give you that, that's good feeling. So I always use 1 pound of Jimmy Dean sage, and then I buy a bag of mild shredded cheese, and usually those bags come pre-packaged with 2 cups in them, and that's usually the amount that I use for each recipe. So then what I would do is, first and foremost, I take the Jimmy Dean sausage and I cut it out of the wrapper, and then I would put that into my KitchenAid mixer bowl. I put that in first because a lot of times once things get to mixing in there, if you don't put it in first and like you were to put, say, the Bisquick on the bottom, you may not get it all mixed in well the way you want to, and unless you're using your hands, you don't really have that option to kind of go in there and get it all mixed up together. So I always put the meat in first, and sometimes I'll even flatten it out into the bottom of the bowl, and that way you can kind of pour the Bisquick right in on top of it. So usually I go ahead and just put that 1 pound of Jimmy Dean sausage in there. That's enough to make about 24 to 26 sausage balls, I would say. So I lay that down in the bottom. Then I measure out 2 cups. Usually I have to do 1 cup at a time because I only have 1 set of measuring cups. So I do 2 cups of Bisquick, and I'll take them and I'll just pour them in on top like I said. And then after that, once you have the Bisquick in and you have the sausage in, I normally just open the bag of cheese and just pour it straight from the bag because usually it's 2 cups, and to be honest with you, if it's a little more than 2 cups, it's not going to hurt my feelings because I love cheese. So normally what I'll do is I'll put all the ingredients into the bowl, then I'll set my bowl up onto the mixing stand, and it just kind of sits in and then it clicks in like so. Usually the KitchenAid mixer comes with 3 different mixing apparatuses. The one that I use particularly for meat mixtures and stuff like that is a white apparatus, and I'll show it to you. Hang on one second, I just washed it. So it looks like this. And this is the one that I use for any kind of meat type preparation. So you just kind of click that in there, and it just kind of snaps on. So then what you're gonna do is you're gonna put that down. And these mixers are very, very funny. You have to lock them in. If you do not lock the mixer in, then you're gonna wind up with a mess, because it's just gonna go bouncing up and down and everything's gonna get everywhere and it's gonna be a huge disaster. So I make sure the first thing I do is I lock my mixer. Then you want to determine which kind of speed that you want to mix at. Normally I kind of start out at around 2 to 4, and those are the lowest speeds. I start out on those speeds to make sure that, you know, everything's not going to come spinning out at me, and to make sure that it all gets mixed in there well. So I'll go ahead and turn it on just to kind of show you what it's like. Normally when I hit it about 2, it gets going a little bit faster, and usually after it gets mixed in at 2 a little bit, I'll kind of bump it up to 4. I usually don't bump it over 4 for any kind of meat mixture or anything like that, because then there's really no point and it starts getting into like the meatloaf kind of stuff, and you really don't want that for meatballs. So once it's mixed in really well and you can see that all the ingredients are well combined into the mixture, you can go ahead and just turn that off. And then after you turn that off, you just unlock it, lift it back up. Usually I go ahead and try to get rid of this guy, put him back in the sink or either in the dishwasher or something somewhere where he can get clean. And then usually I go ahead and unlock my bowl, sit it close to my prep area. Usually I just use the stovetop for my prep area. Main reason being is I'm not going to put them on tinfoil or something else, or put them on a plate and then transfer them, because usually when I make them I just like to go ahead and cook them. So my oven is still preheating, and then what you'll do is you have this nice meat mixture found in the bowl. And what you do, I say normally what I'll do is I would take about a palmful of the meat mixture and get just about as much to cover the middle of your palm. And then the way that I do it is I just kind of roll it around like you were making a biscuit or anything else. You just kind of roll it around and roll it around. And I do this a few times because I like mine to be really smooth and I like them to be all even. So I usually say about maybe if you're really into measuring, I would just say, you know, dip in there, maybe get like 2 tablespoons. And usually 2 tablespoons makes a pretty hefty size sausage ball, and there's enough in there to make 1. So I normally would do that, and then I roll it up, and then I sit it right on my baking sheet. So I do that over and over and over and over again until I have, you know, this whole entire thing filled up with a solid 24 to 25, maybe 26, however many I can squeeze out of my mixture. I think I have gotten about 28 out before, so it just depends on how far you stretch it or how big you are going to have them or how small you're going to have them. So usually I go ahead and I have all of my sausage balls on the cookie sheet or the pan. Next thing, you know, like I said, we've been sitting here talking and my oven still has not preheated, which is terrible, but in a perfect world it would have already been preheated. And what we would do is we would just go ahead and open our oven up and sit our cookie sheet in with our sausage balls on. Normally I put mine on the top rack. I don't really like it to be too close to the bottom because I don't like the bottom of my sausage balls to burn. I do not usually use the timer on my oven because I feel like when I use the timer on my oven, a lot of times with the oven that I have, like if I use the timer on here, whenever the timer goes off, my oven just completely shuts off. So then if it's not completely done, I have to wait on the whole process over again. And usually it's not that bad if I walk right in on it and it's not done, but if it times out and I'm not in the same room, and you know, it just can be a pain in the behind to have to go back in and preheat the oven all over again. So usually I put my sausage balls in the oven. I normally let mine cook for 25 minutes. I would say 350 degrees at 25 minutes is a really good time for sausage ball cooking. Usually it gives you a really good flaky looking crust on the bottom of the sausage ball, and then the top of it is usually still really moist, and it's actually kind of juicy looking, and it's really good that way. So that's what I do. I normally just pull it right back out once the timer goes off, either on the oven or on my phone. Usually I set mine on my phone. So after about 25 minutes, I grab my favorite oven mitts. These are my favorite oven mitts, and I just go in for it. I grab them and I pull them back out. Be careful, don't burn yourself. I have burnt myself several times on the oven learning how to cook. So after I have them back out, I usually let them cool for about, I would say 10 to 15 minutes. Usually sometimes I can't keep people to keep their hands off of them long enough. My husband's usually the first person in here grabbing them, wanting to taste test them. So I usually just try to let them cool for 10 to 15 minutes. And that is usually just how I make my sausage balls. So I hope that you guys learned something today, and if you have any questions, feel free to message me. I'd be glad to explain it to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and I hope you make them this year for the holidays.